Alright guys, Scrappy again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Pred responding to all the Crimsix drama over the last few days. Going into the minor tournament, Crim gave his thoughts on the team, their playstyle, how things were looking very slow against the Ravens in the week before, and also Crimsix's perspective from a team play perspective on exactly what OpTic need to do to turn things around very quickly indeed. That advice was, I don't want to say ignored, but certainly talked about by the OpTic Campaigner podcast and others in the scene as well that have been given their perspective on OpTic's play despite not playing this particular game professionally. Pred comes out and says, look, maybe Crim wasn't fully the target of our discussion there, and Crim's been joking around being an ESPN analyst as well over the last couple of days, but the point still stands that there is certain criticism and decision making that is being made by OpTic that does not necessarily align with what's actually happening in the server. But very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy, subscribe if you're new as always, I greatly appreciate it. Let's just move on from this video quite quickly. Now, Modern Warfare 4 is coming up soon. I can't wait, right? Wow, really excited for this. Now, it's not coming up this year. This year's game is potentially Black Ops 7. We don't really know exactly what it's going to be called, but it's meant to be set somewhere between Black Ops 2, which was set in 2025, of course this year, and Black Ops 3, which was, I don't know, set in the 2050 sometime, I don't know. Some sort of sequel to Black Ops 2 is the game that we're apparently going to get this year, probably with all the OG Black Ops 2 maps back in business. It's probably going to be somewhat similar to the way that this game feels, in the same way that MW3 was an evolution on an MW2. It may be the same thing this year. Next year, though, we're back to Modern Warfare, baby. Wow. And these are some of the ideas. It will have a more traditional UI, like the older games, which I'm down for. I mean, at the end of the day, does the UI really matter? All I care about is the maps, to some degree. Like, the maps are the most important thing, and, well, we'll see what happens with them. Engine being overhauled to address the MW2 problems, like the visual clutter, being developed on dev kit to the next Xbox. Let's talk about the movement as well. This is interesting, though. There was a big talking point in CoD yesterday that Warzone 3 may not happen, right? They may not do it. If Verdansk fails to retain some of its current and returning players, Warzone is in a position where, you know, if it dies, it may just die. I don't know what that means, right? Like, if Warzone dies and they don't really support it as much anymore, I guess there's a serious question on, like, what that means for CoD. Is it a good or a bad thing? I know that some of us in the competitive scene might be celebrating that, just because Warzone, in my opinion, was in many respects the beginning of the downfall of the quality of competitive multiplayer CoD. But also it was very important because if it wasn't for Warzone, CoD wouldn't have been as big as it was when the CDL first came around. And some of that momentum has been keeping CoD alive and more stable and maybe more development resources than we've seen before. But, you know, you could also argue that some of the resources for esports play have been committed towards the World Series of Warzone, which, you know, as far as I'm concerned, was never a serious competitive proposition in the longer term, and maybe that money might get redirected into the CDL, but I certainly wouldn't get your hopes up on that. Sounds like wishful thinking to me. But what he does mention, Ghost of Hope, as well, is that apparently the Black Ops 7 game coming out this year is going to have wall running, which we rumoured a while ago, and some sort of omni movement. So this was a big rumour, right, that this year's CoD coming out in, you know, 7-8 months time, whatever it'll be, let's say 8 months time roughly, that game will have wall running and effectively enhanced omni movement behaviours where you're going to be sliding around and jumping backwards and everything, but you can also run on the walls. Now, unfortunately for Kenny, some of the first replies I saw to this tweet were like, oh, well, Kenny's going to be even more cooked than he is now because the movement's getting even more chaotic. Maybe Kenny's not especially happy with on this iteration of the game as it stands. But yeah, the plan is that this year's game, the movement will be the same as the year after. So apparently Omni Movement Plus or Omni Movement Pack-a-Punched or whatever is here to stay. I'm not saying it's jetpacks, but this game plays fast. The Omni movement is fun, it's fluid, that's my opinion, and then we're going to add wall running into the mix, and apparently that is set to stay, not just for this year's game, but in future as well. We'll see if that's a good or a bad idea in due course, I suppose. Let's talk about some viewership, given we've discussed the Warzone stuff. These are the numbers for the Minor 2, and yeah, gentle mates, they made a run. But not much of a run. They, of course, took down Heretics to make it through to the second round before then subsequently losing. That was actually the highest viewed series of the entire weekend, amazingly enough, with 152,500 viewers across Gataga stream and elsewhere. The other two series were the OpTic series, peaking at about 140k. Definitely these numbers. I'm sure that the CDL will be looking at this thinking, damn, the Minor's kind of cooked. Now, it's not like the viewership was crazy. The peak was down about 10% compared to the first Minor, and the average was pretty similar, to be fair, Minor to Minor, about 95,000 viewers on average. To be honest, not bad at all, I think, given the circumstances. And look, obviously people wanted to see how OpTic were going to do, but even the grand finals, right, Vancouver versus Thieves, 130k viewers for, you know, bottom line an online CDL tournament. I mean, it's a lot better viewership, I think, than you'd normally expect for league matches. So I'm hoping that the CDL look at this and they say, we should probably run more of these type of things because the fans care about it. Wow, I'm shocked. The fans want to see a tournament where somebody wins. Couldn't have possibly predicted this one after we've seen over the last, you know, decade plus of Call of Duty, but for some reason the CDL didn't really seem to understand that until, well, maybe now it's going to be slightly more of a talking point in their type of conversations. But let's discuss the drama with the Green Wall and certainly the way that Crimsix was getting involved. It caused a lot of controversy the other day when Crim was giving his take on the OpTic team, and there seemed to be a feeling at OpTic that Crim, you know, he wasn't fully qualified to comment in some regards. And look, it wasn't just Crim, and I mentioned this at the time. Yes, Crimsix was grabbing their headlines because they brought him into that discussion, but he wasn't, you know, the main target of their discussion, maybe. I mean, look, you could obviously speculate who might be talking about, whether it was us on the show. I think Enable was certainly in the conversation because he was also giving his thoughts, and there's plenty of other individuals as well that have given their take on OpTic's play in recent times. Just to mention, OpTic are currently 8th in the league. They're behind Surge Rocker and Heretics. They're 15 points ahead of Boston. Cloud9 are making a bit of progress. I think the Gentlemates and Falcons are chalked for World Championship qualification, but you know, it's not just about the major, and it is also worth noting to some extent that the most recent tournament we had, the Minor, was the second and final tournament of the Minor of the year. So, you know, after Major 2, we are over halfway through the year because there's no Minors in Major 2, Major 3 cycle the way that it's currently scheduled. So after Major 2, half of the points that you can accrue in the season have been accrued. Actually, more than half the points you can accrue in the season have been accrued. So if OpTic at that time after Major 2 are in some serious jeopardy, it's not guaranteed they're just going to get out of the slump and all of a sudden rise up the rankings, because if you thought it was bad, it is pretty bad, like looking at some of these numbers. So yeah, the drama was around Crim and Enable and potentially others as well. OpTic were commenting on it going into the weekend, saying, these guys think they're analysts, especially people who don't even play the game. You know, Kenny was saying, you know, we play the game every day, so we actually know, you know, what to change, what to fix, and fair enough. But of course, if you're going to say that, you got to show us some evidence you could actually do it, right? Because, you know, as it stands, I feel like putting the dynasty of Scum, Crim, Formal, and Karma back into that OpTic Texas lineup, I feel like they'd do better. Would they win more maps in this current OpTic Texas team? I don't know. It's arguable, to say the very least. And it's not just that Crim was talking about. He was giving some advice elsewhere as well from the mental perspective, how they need to approach these matches to achieve better than they presently are. And Crim decided to stop by Pred's chat last night, and Pred was laughing and joking and having a good time. So, you know, it seems like the vibes aren't totally chalked at OpTic, but yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because whatever Pred does, whatever any of the OpTic players do, if they stream, if they don't stream, people are going to talk about it. They're going to say, damn, aG, like, why aren't you watching VOD, right? So, you know, you can't really win as an OpTic player in times like these, but you have to win if you want to turn it around. So that is the blessing and the curse. So Crim was in the chat and says, ESPN analyst here, because that's what, you know, that's what they talked about the other day. And look, sure, did they implicate Crim in the same way as the others? No, but also it's impossible to do so because he is the winningest COD player ever for a very good reason indeed. So this is what Pred says, that look, of the people that they were discussing, Crim, you know, wasn't really in the conversation, wasn't really included, but it's not like Pred backs down on the idea of them criticizing people that have discussed their gameplay problems.
Hey man, thanks for the I'm trying to rage bait you. He's been us, Stephen A. Crim in the case. Like that ass. That's Stephen A. Crim, it's more about the other people, Crim. Less about you. Yoda King. Hey, Inda, get the fuck on, bro. It's more about the other people brought up. It's a bit different of you, because you've like, I mean, you've won a lot.
So whatever your thoughts are on the Crimsix piece, Pred is still saying that, okay, look, Krim, fair enough. You won so much that your opinion does count. Of course his opinion counts to some degree, but there's plenty of other players. He's like, look, Krim, fair enough. And I also think the problem is that for OpTic side, you know, it's not, I wouldn't say a family exactly, but Krim is part of OpTic, right? So if you're going to, as OpTic, go on a podcast and criticize people for suggesting that things might need to change or problems that are happening and decisions that need to be made differently or whatever, Krim isn't the guy to criticize because he's part of the org, right? Like, he's part of everything like that. So, you know, I thought that was pretty outrageous. But it's not like there aren't other individuals as well that have also won a fair bit who were also given their criticism. It wasn't just Krim. Enable was the other key one. He was discussing some of the problems and, you know, Pred leaving Kenny out to dry on occasions and decisions that were being made on the map and these type of things. Enable's won plenty. Is he a world champion Enable? No. Does Kenny have more rings than Enable? Does that entire team have more rings than Enable? Yes, of course Kenny and Enable team together for some time as well. Look, Pred has a ring, Enable doesn't have a ring. Does that invalidate Enable's opinion? No, Enable's won more events than Pred, and aBeZy has won more rings than Scump. Does that make aBeZy a better player? Absolutely not, although, you know, Donk was a great player in his day as well. And then when you've got Aches, 2-time world champion, Octane, 1-time world champion, Zuma, 0-time world champion, talking all this about how OpTic are making mistakes, you know, OpTic considering them in the same conversation, because it seems to be, if they're talking about, you know, people thinking they're ESPN analysts and not playing the game and think they know what OpTic need to do to try and win, maybe they were talking about Crimsix initially, now not so much, and Enable, mostly in those conversations, but surely it also applies elsewhere as well. It just, again, kind of screams of a feeling of not taking full accountability for what is actually going on. I understand OpTic's perspective. I feel like I would probably feel the same way to some degree if I was a player in that situation. But at the end of the day, it's not these guys' fault given their perspective on why OpTic suck right now. It's OpTic's, you know, decision to try and get out of this slump. And if they can't, then they're going to prove a lot of these guys right who are making claims, such as what Aches will do whenever given the opportunity to do so. So what are OpTic going to do to turn it around? Time will only tell over the next weekend. Of course, they play Miami and Toronto. That is rather important, as we full well know. And just to close out with a funny thing, I've never actually seen this before. These Skybox Metal Universe Champions cards. I think these are Upper Deck cards, the same people that made the CDL cards that keep coming out every so often. And yeah, this guy went to a random card shop and he found a Hex card. I'd never seen this before in my life for $1. So yeah, kind of a bargain price, I suppose, there, but I didn't even know this existed. I wonder if there's any other COD personalities or characters on these cards coming out relatively shortly. But very much interested in your thoughts on all of this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.
Why am I going to court? I'm going to court because I got a ticket when I was I got a ticket when I was 18, and they didn't just get, like, they just sent me a court thing like a couple months ago. So I'm like, bro, you're tripping. This was 4 years ago, bro. Like, I'm not paying this shit, nor am I taking a plea deal, motherfucker. We going to trial, and we about to see if you can beat me in this shit. Because, bro, I don't remember anymore. I don't remember what happened. The bullshit.